Welcome back to another edition of the Wolverine.com TV podcast. I'm Chris Balas. With me, Doug Skene, Michigan's former All Big Ten offensive lineman, doing his Drew Carey impression once again. Skene, do these headphones make me look fat?
That's a good question, Ballas. I think I'd have to ask the same thing, and usually the answer is the same. It's your fat that makes you look fat.
It's your no.
So,
You're supposed to say no. It's your face. That's a line from Tommy Boy. No, it's your face does or something like that. So
right.
classic. So good to see you made it home, man. Back to the office. You're not on the road. We thought you were gonna have to do this from a hotel room this week, but here you are, man. So you had a chance to watch the film, and skiing. It was not pretty, man. And I said during the game, you could see when you were warming up. I think it was Jack Miller, Michigan's former offensive lineman, who was on the sidelines, and he was talking to Doug Karsh and John Jansen up in the booth, and he said, "You know what? These guys are minuscule, man. It looks like a JV team out here." And I felt bad for them. And my first impression when I saw this team out there was, God, I hope they don't get anybody killed on the way home. They were that small, and that was just a bad football team.
Well, things looked really nice for Michigan, right? And as we thought they would. But let's just pump the brakes, like we talked about going into this game, and that boy, Hawaii is not a very good team. Not very good at all. Their defensive front, with the exception of the one defensive tackle that moved around, had a couple sacks. He got in there on us a couple times. Um, but boy, the rest of that team, no, no, sir, not very good at all. So let's just take it for what it is. We expected Michigan to roll and roll easily. They did. There's not without some areas for improvement. There's a couple offensive linemen that stood out to me, gave up some pressures and some sacks a couple times there, but overall, exactly what we thought. McCarthy's going to play really well against a terrible defense, and as he did. And the Michigan offensive line had their way with that defensive front, and the Michigan defensive line had their way with the Hawaii our offensive front. So exactly what we thought should happen did happen.
Yep, and our producer Hutch, Hawaii severely outmatched versus Michigan. This is why we pay him the big bucks here, right here. The graphics, and look at that though. The quarterback rating 334.5. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And the
Yeah.
one that he missed was a drop by Ronnie Bell. It was a little bit behind him. Ronnie's got to get a little bit better here and get his hands back and his confidence. A couple games here where he has dropped a couple passes,
It's
but
two in a row. There's two,
it
absolutely
is.
two in a row where there's some couple that
Yep.
hit him right in the hands.
Yep.
You got to catch those, and I
Yep.
don't care if it's Hawaii, because we're going to need that catch later against some other opponents.
Exactly. Some good opponents, which we aren't going to see for quite some time. Skeen, I was going back and I was talking to Karsh this morning, Michigan's play-by-play man, about some of the schedules that we've seen in the past. I don't think as overall as a non-conference schedule, I've seen worse at Michigan.
Yeah.
You look at Colorado State. By the way, Colorado State, I don't know if you saw, they gave up 9 sacks and got trounced by Middle Tennessee State. Okay. UConn, Michigan's next opponent, was absolutely destroyed by Syracuse. I think 48-14. They're
Yep.
terrible.
Yep.
So you really aren't going to know a whole lot about this team until they play maybe at Iowa. And I understand about Iowa's offensive deficiencies. They're awful. I mean, they are god awful. See, Hutch, man, you're right on the ball.
Well, right
But
on
uh,
it.
but I will say this: their defense can play. This dude, I love this guy. Yeah, but Iowa has a defense. Okay, so you know what? If
Yeah.
you get into one of those roll around in the mud type of games like they had in 2016 when it was what 15-13 or something like that, or 13
Yeah.
to 12, and then maybe you could be in trouble. But until then, we really aren't going to know a whole lot about this team.
No, and that's unfortunate for us as fans, and I'm guessing way down deep in the bowels of Schembechler Hall, that coaching staff and some of those players are probably wondering, boy, how good are we, right? We think we're good. We know we're good, right? Michigan's got a good team this year, but until you really put that thing to the test against someone who's a legitimate opponent, you just don't know. And the first half test, if you will, is going to be this at Iowa game, because we'll see how our offense does against their defense. But if the Iowa offense is anything like it is right now, boy, we should win that football game. But and so then you look further down the schedule right here at Indiana. Okay, Penn State. Maybe that'll be the first real test. And if not Penn State, then certainly Michigan State, because I think we can all agree the Spartans know how to play this rivalry game, and that'll be the first real test. And then you look after that, and you go, wow, there's not much left until you play the Buckeyes. So
Wow,
it's the schedule sucks,
it
Ballas. It just
does.
sucks this year. And I don't think that Ward or previous athletic director or whoever it was set this thing up intentionally to be this soft. Usually you see Michigan might have a Colorado State and a Hawaii on there, but there's somebody else, right? There's a UCLA or somebody that's got some Notre Dame or somebody that's got some cachet, although Notre Dame is 0-2. That really brought a shed of tear in my eye there,
I knew
Balas.
that was going to
Yeah.
hurt your feelings.
Yeah, I can't help but smiling about that. So it just sort of is what it is. And until we get into October, we're just going to have to take these games and watch Michigan dismantle these lesser opponents and look for areas that have to be concerned. Just like Ronnie Bell, you can't drop the football, dude. You just can't
Right.
do that. And
Nope.
and Zinter at right guard, you can't give up a sack. You're
No.
past that. Although I don't think it was Zinter at right guard, but Hayes at left tackle
Yep.
gave up a heavy pressure, got his quarterback drilled on a play. It's like, whoa, that can't happen. I don't care if it's Hawaii or anybody else. You can't do those things. So we'll look for things that need to be improved along the way, but it's going to be kind of boring for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, Ayako, I love it. Ayako is one of the preferred customers on the Ford at the Wolverine.com, our premium message board. She says a yen per yard allowed by Notre Dame yesterday. It was fun to watch it. I got to tell you, man, Marshall beat them up. Marshall,
Uh-huh.
there was nothing flukish about that. In fact, Notre Dame was lucky to have an opportunity at the end of that game. So, but
Yeah.
Ayako breaks down the some of the opponents on our board before the games and does a great job doing that. I also saw something from John Stacy about the schedule. I think it was him talking about the schedule. And yeah, Notre Dame lost to Marshall. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
supposed to be a guarantee game, right? Texas A&M loses to Appalachian State. By the way, three of Desmond Howard, your former teammate, three of his four playoff teams lost yesterday in week 2. So the only one left standing is Michigan. I don't know how to feel about that. If you're excited that Michigan's still standing, or is it only a matter
Oh,
of
I'm
time, man?
excited. I'm excited. Let's
Yeah,
let's not make any mistake. I'm
sure.
happy that Michigan looks like they've got a real team here, and
Yeah,
and it's just untested. I
yeah,
think there's a lot to be excited about with this Michigan team. We wondered about things, and through 2 weeks of college football now, it's like, well, this thing could be wide open. It's still early though. Let's just see
yep,
how this plays out. But it looks
yep.
like Michigan's absolutely going to be a factor. There doesn't seem to be anybody that stands out as unbeatable right at this point. And that Texas A&M game, boy, Ballas, I got a lot of buddies from high school that went to Texas A&M, and I was like, you don't want to do this, fellas. You really don't want to do this.
No, Allen, Texas grad here, who is one of the best ever to play for Allen. And people who don't know, Allen, Texas is a powerhouse. And it was great when your coach went on there one time. He was doing a local TV show, and one of our subscribers sent me a clip of him saying you were the best player that he ever coached, man. Of course, that was before some of these other guys that have come through, but still, man, that's a
Yeah.
feather in your cap. Who are some of
Well,
the other guys that came after you?
yeah, there's a couple. There's an offensive lineman, George Little, that came out of there. I think was his name, boy, what a great player he was. And then, of course, the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals is an Allen High School graduate, and so there's been a lot of great football players come out of Allen. But my buddies from high school, they're all Aggies down there, and boy, for them to lose to Appalachian State. I just was texting with them like, I share your misery because you're
Yeah.
going to hear about this for a while, a
Ex-
long while.
Except they're no longer FCS; they are FBS
Yeah,
now.
that's true.
So
That's true. It
yeah,
makes still makes ours a
yeah.
little bit worse.
Yep.
But
I'm going to get to Smitty's question here in a second about the health of Eric All and Donovan Edwards. But there was a guy, Pure Montana, who posted and he was talking about the offensive line. And we're going to get to that here in a second. But Pure Montana, man, are we sure that's not Drew Bledsoe, your boy? For people who don't know, our guy, Doug Skene here, blocked for Drew Bledsoe with the New England Patriots when you started those 6 games before Chester McLaughlin fell on his leg and blew up his knee, and that was ended your career. But man, you want to tell some of those Montana stories, or maybe we do that for another time, like on an
that might be
OnlyFans
another
later?
time, but the question is the one that I'm concerned about, and we
Yes.
we talked about what coming into this game, what should we look for, and I said perfection on that offensive line, and after
Hmm.
watching the defensive front from Hawaii, there's no reason that our quarterback should have been touched, let alone sacked. And I don't care what guy was in there. I know there was couldn't even catch his name, Ballas, when I was watching the film a little while ago. Backup right guard number 60. Who is that, Ballas? Who is that?
Geez, it wasn't El Hadi, was it?
No, Al
No,
Hadi's number
it was
58.
Connor Jones, I believe. Yeah,
Jones. Okay.
true
All
freshman, I
right.
believe.
So young
So,
guy looked like a true freshman out
yep,
there, right?
yep.
It was a one-on-one pass pro. and gave up the inside move and bent at the waist. And it's like, okay, that can't happen. I don't care if you're the true freshman in there or not. And then I think the most disappointing thing, we're going to get detailed here, is Hayes at left tackle gave up an
Yes.
edge. And that was his first game, right? His first game action, but still, considering what he's been practicing against all season long here and through camp and through the early part of the year, um, but I wasn't expecting to see that. And that he's got to eliminate those kinds of mistakes from his game,
Yeah.
period. It's one thing to give up if you've got, maybe a defensive front ran a really good game on you, and maybe somebody got on your hip and they did a twist or something. You just got beat one-on-one around the edge.
Yeah.
That can't happen anymore. And
No.
so I notice these things, and at times, not blowing holes open where there was some just massive holes in there because
Yeah.
Hawaii was just outmatched. And again, Michigan was only running about 6 to 8 plays
Right.
offensively. But
And Skene, you mentioned half the time these guys weren't filling gaps. It looked like they weren't even trying to play football. They were just running
yeah,
around out there.
well, I would argue that maybe by the end of that first quarter, Hawaii was looking for the Chick-fil-A sandwich on the bus and let's get the hell out of here. They were about done.
Yeah.
And it didn't look like they had a whole lot of expectations for performance there as the
No.
game opened, because Corum goes around that corner and the Hawaii dudes are just kind of jogging. I'm like, what in the world is this, right?
Yeah.
This is the first play of the game.
Yeah.
Good on Michigan, right? Absolutely good for them. But oh boy,
Yeah.
it's just not a very good football team by
Yeah.
that Hawaii team.
Chicken sandwich, and don't forget the Snickers bar. Hopefully king size,
Well,
right?
the king size Snickers bar is the big
Yeah.
one because
Yeah.
us fat guys, we like the king size Snickers bars.
It's all right. You get your reward at the end of the game, and Hawaii got theirs. Boy, they got $2 million, and they got to go back, and it looked like nobody was hurt too badly. So, but love
Yeah,
Montana, by the way. Going to be out in Montana at some point picking huckleberries. So, if you're in Montana, hit me up in a DM, man. I'd love to know where to go. So, all right, Skene, another one. Trente Jones had another pressure, but here was a disappointing part to me. Okay, you've got a teammate here in Cade McNamara who has completely lost his confidence, and it's very
yeah,
clear at quarterback. And you put him in there with the first team line, and this kid needs a pick me up, right? This kid
yeah,
needs his guys in front of him to play well. And they gave up 3 sacks in a row, and then the
yeah,
crowd starts to boo. And I want to say this right
yeah.
now, that was really the most despicable display, one of the most despicable displays I've seen in that stadium.
Here's a question for you though.
Yes.
Were
Yep.
they booing the quarterback or were they booing the crappy offensive line play in front of
They were
him?
booing the quarterback because they were kind of, some people were booing him and grumbling when he came on the field. Okay,
Oh,
and yeah,
come on,
exactly.
Michigan, you're better than that.
Are they? I'm
Come
starting to wonder,
on.
man. I'm on a message board with about 10 or 15 people where you're like, is this who you are? You know what I mean? And it's like,
I mean,
come on, people.
this is the guy again. Hindsight is
Yes.
it's 2020. This is the guy that led Michigan to a championship season last year and did a wonderful job along the way. And the kid this fall has gotten beaten out for this starting job by a guy who's got a little more talent in that shoulder and in these feet.
Yeah.
JJ's a wonderful player. It's
Yes.
obvious, right? That doesn't mean Cade is dog crap and shouldn't be on the field. Yeah, he's a really good ball player and really took the Michigan football offense forward last year in a way that we haven't seen since Jim Harbaugh's been here.
Yeah.
So that's disappointing to hear. It's not like the kid's not out there trying his best.
Right.
And when offensive linemen in front of him get him killed, it's not his fault. It's
Yeah.
not his fault. And so, I'm a little defensive of the quarterbacks, especially a guy who's done as well as Cade has and served Michigan very well.
Yeah. And didn't you hear they won in spite of him? Skene
Oh,
is the,
God.
I know.
Yeah,
I just,
I know.
yeah, it's tough, man.
Yeah,
But yeah, and I do think hopefully the booing is gone. But here's the thing: Michigan fans don't understand that they are one play away, right? From, say JJ McCarthy gets hurt, say he has a tough game at Iowa or something, and you need that championship quarterback to go back in an environment where he's been able to do some things like Nebraska last year and Penn State. So it only helps you to prop this kid up and to support him. How I don't understand how you don't understand that. That's what really bothers me. But it's just human decency, and that's
yeah,
the factor that really bugs me. You know what? This may come across as a get off my lawn type of thing. I don't really give a crap because
yeah,
this kid deserved a lot better than that. So, but
yeah,
back to my point though, Scheme, before I let you finish yours, uh, he needed more from those guys. There were 3 plays in a row where his
mhm.
veteran offensive lineman let him down. That was really, to me, one of the disappointing points of the ball game.
Well, and if I go back and look at the film again, it's not because Hawaii was running some exotic twist game, right, or some exotic blitz. They were just getting beat one on one, which is the standard of performance, right? So the point here again is what is that just a total coincidence? I have a hard time believing, Ballas, that quarterback steps in that huddle and the offensive line kind of look at each other and go, all right, well, let's just sort of half-ass this blocking here. I don't get that feeling at all. Now, there have been previous quarterbacks at Michigan in the last 10 years that you and I have talked about where I'm like, you know what? I don't think those guys like that dude.
Yeah.
And because they're not helping him up off the ground. And there were just sort of things I know as a former player where you can tell whether offensive linemen love their quarterback or not. I don't think that's the case with Cade. So what gives? How do you
Right.
give up that much pressure and that much heat on your quarterback in one series when he steps in the huddle? And so that was disappointing that the offensive line allowed that. And again, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is back there. When you play offensive line from Michigan, the standard is no one touches the quarterback ever.
Yeah. And now, Sharon Moore, what is your message to him? What would Les Miles have said to those guys if they hung him out to dry like that back in the
Oh,
day?
yeah. We would have heard an earful coming off
Yeah.
the sideline, absolutely. And there would have been that would have carried over in a win like that.
Yeah.
When, like I mentioned earlier, where the coach is probably wondering how good this team is, that would have been the catalyst for the following week of you're not good enough at that position to play like that, and we're going to find out this week, getting ready for the UConn game, whether you're good enough to keep this job.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that we would have been subject to for sure when you give up a play like that, because you just can't do it. You can't do it because for several reasons you got to keep your quarterback upright, but there's going to be opponents down the road and you have to keep that standard very, very high. And so offensive linemen can never be told getting your quarterback hit or sacked is okay.
Right.
So I would like to think that Coach Moore probably lit into his guys like, what the hell is going on here? And why is there this drop off? And I'd like to think that he did that because, again, the standard is no one touches the quarterback.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's in there.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Sharon Moore. Somebody asked me this. They said, when your offensive coordinator is also your offensive line coach and he's kind of splitting duties, and maybe you're giving some responsibility to an associate offensive line coach or something like that, can that affect things? Because I don't want to give these guys any excuses because they played a lot of football. Scheme. There's no reason, like you said, this wasn't some kind of elaborate twist or something like that. This is just guys getting beaten up front. But
Yeah.
you know what? There was something to be said for when Les Miles or Jerry Hanlon had his hands on you guys all the time and was there beating it into your skulls.
Well, I don't know how to answer the question,
Yeah.
Ballas, because I don't know how much play calling Coach Moore is involved in, and I don't know what the support system is, the setup for the offensive line, who's helping him coach that offensive line. But let's just play along here and play a hypothetical. If in fact Coach Moore is involved in the play calling, in other words, all right, it's 1st and 10, we're sending this set of plays on the field. You send the guy out there, he's got the plays, or you do, like they do now, everybody looks to the sideline to see what the play call is. There's involvement of coaching going on there. If that's the case, then yeah, there's probably a little less attention to the details and just focusing only on the tackle box when you're the offensive line coach out there. So it could absolutely play a factor. And then if that's the case, then who is keeping an eye on that tackle box when you're in there? I know from experience when you play for a guy who's only got the offensive line, boy, he had his notes. Coach Hanlon and Coach Miles had their notes before you came off the field. We're going to go right back. We're going to talk about what happened on 1st and 10, 2nd and long, 3rd and long. And in this case, what we're talking about with the one with Hayes there at left tackle, if I'm playing left tackle on that snap, that's the first question I'm getting when I get to the sideline is what happened there? And
By
he's
the way, it
already
looked
going to
like
have seen it.
it looked like he ducked his head, right? What
Yeah,
happened?
he bent at the waist,
Right.
right? His feet got flat, and anytime you bend and your head goes down as an offensive tackle, you're asking for problems. Um, for anybody out there watching this podcast that has not played offensive line, imagine playing that position at 2nd or 3rd and long. In practices, sometimes coaches will say, "Take your helmet off, and we're going to do this drill." And when you pass block without a helmet on, you're going to keep your head back and your hands out. And you're going to keep that nice body posture and balance because you don't pass block with your face mask ever. You don't want to do that. And so when you watch an offensive lineman and their feet get flat and their waist just bends a little bit and a guy gets on your shoulder, it's over. It's
Yep.
absolutely over, and that's all he did on that snap.
Yep.
And it looked just like, it was a repeat of what happened last year at Penn State in a much bigger moment
Yep.
against a much better opponent.
Yeah.
That's got to be eliminated. Hayes is better than that. That's what's
It
so
is.
frustrating. He's a much better player than that to
Yep.
be able to give up lazy hits on his quarterback like that. Just get rid of it.
You almost said a bad word. And they aren't allowed to do that drill anymore, Skene. They have to have like a big thing on their helmet that looks like a parade float balloon or something because we don't want anybody getting hurt. So I don't know if that's true. I just made
No,
that up.
I highly doubt that they do
Yeah.
that anymore. But I guarantee you in the off season when they're doing some drills and you're doing the shorts and t-shirt stuff, and all these linemen do this now. The high school kids all do it. Well, you're not gonna put your nose in there.
Yeah.
Number one, because you're not supposed to. Number two, because it hurts. You don't want to
Yep.
get hit in the nose. And so anyway, a little bit about offensive line technique, and then the same thing happened to the young freshman lineman in there when he got beat at their
Yeah.
right guard. He just feet got flat, they didn't move, and he bent at the waist, and the dude's on his shoulder, and it's over.
Yeah, yep. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterbacks. The last thing I want to say about Cade McNamara, people are saying, "Oh, this is Cade being Cade." This is not Cade McNamara being Cade McNamara. We saw him play some good football last year. Is he the physical specimen that JJ McCarthy is? Absolutely not. But this guy had some really good football games and had some great moments. Go back and watch that Ohio State game. The best one that I hear is, "Oh, the defense and Hassan Haskins won that game." And I'm like, you know what? It takes a guy to run the game, and he had some great throws in that game to manage the game. Yeah, I hesitate to say game manager because everybody's going to pounce on that, like, oh, you're
Yeah.
just saying he's a game manager. He's not a quarterback. He's better than that too. So
Yeah.
hoping that comes on. Also, I'm going to tell you a little story. There, a couple people that we know were at that game with the parents and parents of recruits who were hearing these Michigan fans booing the kid that won them a Big Ten championship last year. And they said, "Isn't that the boy that won you a title last year?" Recruits parents. So if you think you're
Mhm.
not doing any harm, okay, think twice here and just a little bit
Mhm.
of decency and kindness here. All right.
Mhm.
So
Yep,
now
yep.
get off my lawn. Now let's talk about JJ McCarthy here because this kid was outstanding. And we'd heard that he's been coming on and coming on and coming on. And it was neck and neck going right into, JJ. They said that Cade McNamara had his best camp, but what Jim Harbaugh said at the press conference after the game was, okay, JJ McCarthy had been coming on, and then that last scrimmage, he really started to show that, okay, eliminating some of the mistakes. We'd heard about turnovers and things like that, and that's the one thing that you can't do, as we've
Mm-mm.
talked about forever. But where he put the ball, and again against a crappy defense, and what he did on some of those throws, the pinpoint accuracy, the stepping up in the pocket, just the
Mhm.
really, it looked like he was doing it effortlessly at times, Skene, where he's hitting guys in stride, and Harbaugh made it a point to say, "Hey, we are not going to get this from him every game where he's near perfect." But boy, what a great start for him! Certainly didn't look like the moment was too big for him.
No, I mean, it fulfilled the expectations, right? Everything we've heard, and again, I'm putting an asterisk next to this, saying it was against Hawaii. Had he done this in a big moment game like against Notre Dame or another more worthy September opponent, we would probably have even more hype going on about JJ there. But there's no doubt this kid's got some wheels. He's got the frame. He can run around. There's this perfect shot right there. I think that was a strike he threw across the field while running. I mean, it's really athletic stuff. It's fun to watch. It's exciting to think about what he can do in the biggest of moments that are yet to come for this football team this year. And so I get it. I totally understand. And in the world of college football now, just as it kind of always has been, but I think even more now, Kay did a great job last year. That was last year. And we're trying to do something different this year, and every team is different. And so he brings a different skill set to the field, and it's exciting to watch. And for all the obvious reasons that we saw last night, and yet at the same time, it was Hawaii.
Yeah.
So let's not get too excited.
Right. And I'll go back to John Navarre, and I wrote this. I remember John Navarre coming in 2000 for an injured Drew Henson, and he played Bowling Green and he played Rice. And I think he completed about 90% of his passes with 8 touchdowns and no interceptions. And there were actually some people, if there had been a message board back then, they would have said,
Yeah,
Drew who? Drew Henson isn't
yeah,
getting his job back, which
yeah.
clearly wasn't the case because he goes out to UCLA in week 3 and it looked like he couldn't complete a pass. I think he was
Well,
8 for 21.
right, Ballas. So this goes back to that protection, and you and I have talked about this so many times. If JJ in the coming games, not necessarily against UConn, probably unlikely, but any quarterback that is a human being, which last time I checked they all are, When you get that dude hit and hit regularly in the first part of a football game, it derails their mentality oftentimes for the balance of that game. JJ didn't have that, right? JJ didn't get sacked 3 times in his first possession on the field, or his first 2 possessions on the field, like McNamara did in that game. So as long as that offensive line keeps him happy and clean back there, he can run around and do what he does best, and it will be exciting to watch. But they've got to do that. They've got to keep him clean. And part of that is not just the pass blocking, it's the effective run blocking, so you don't give a defense obvious situations where here comes the pass, so let's go after JJ and make him think and make him hesitate and maybe get a shot on him. So the more you get that running game going, the more you're actually helping your passing game and the mentality of your quarterback who's back there.
Yeah, and it's not until Maryland that they will actually see athletes that are, similar to them. Frankly, Colorado State. I think I told you they gave up 9 sacks, and you know what? These guys are. You know what? Maryland actually has athletes. They don't have a great defense. Michigan has had its way with Maryland and over the last several years.
Yeah.
But if you look at Iowa, that's a great defensive football team. I don't care what
Yeah.
anybody says. Oh, you're stupid to think that's going to be a football game. Who knows how that's going to go? What if you get a little bit of weather or something like that? That's going to
Well, it's
be
going to be at Iowa, so
right.
that
Number
alone
one,
is going to be an issue for this team. The first time they've faced a loud environment to operate their offense in and defense, and so that alone will be a challenge. And we'll see how JJ responds to that moment, because there's going to be, like Jim Harbaugh talked about, he's not going to be like this every game. He's just not going to be. There's going to be some moments like, okay, they're in a hole here a little bit. They've got some little clunky possession or two going on, and now let's see how he responds then. But we're just going to have to wait a few
yep.
weeks to see that happen.
Yeah, and it's the schedule is easy, like we said, even the Big Ten schedule until you get to Penn State. Well, Iowa, Penn State, and Michigan State. Now, I'm going to ask you this: I don't think you ever in your career blocked for a mobile quarterback. Is that right? You had Elvis Gerback. I think Todd
Yeah.
Collins filled in for him at times. Drew Bledsoe was not exactly a burner.
Right,
Was there ever
right.
a time that you blocked for a running quarterback in high
No.
school or anywhere else?
No, at
So,
that time, back in those days, Balas, where color TV was just new, which obviously I'm joking, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
no, the running quarterback, the read option hadn't even been invented yet.
right,
The most dynamic thing we had was play action football. That was it. That was as
right,
close as it came. And so, no, when things broke down or a defensive secondary was really good, the quarterback was taught and they were coached to put it over the first down marker into the third row of the stands and
right.
let's play the next down.
So, are you qualified to talk about what it's like to block for a guy who runs the
Yeah.
read option?
Yes.
So,
Yes, I can tell you
are you
that.
sure?
I
Okay,
can absolutely tell you that because the fundamentals don't change there.
okay,
The only difference is when it's an obvious passing down, your quarterback has choices. So if I'm the right tackle, left tackle, no matter what it is, but more specifically the tackles, if there's pressure and things start to go awry, then I'm probably going to have a conversation along training camp, spring football training camp, and during the season about where to go and how to help me as an offensive lineman not get you sacked. So don't come off my hip, right? So if you're a quarterback, if JJ or Cade, whoever it is, if you're going to bail out of that pocket, don't come right off of my right hip, right? Because that dude on blocking is probably going to reach out and grab you and drag you down. And it's going to be a sack. So, help me set up a block if you're going to do those kinds of things, if you can. And so, at the same time, the quarterbacks are taught to find that bailout route, get rid of the football. And so, what does that say?
so good.
Yes.
Exactly. Three,
Yeah, that's
one and a
funny.
half yards in a cloud of dust.
That
Yes.
was us.
Yeah.
Well, to a degree, right? I
No,
mean,
no.
we kind of
You
aired it
opened it
out a
up
little bit. We
with
did with
Gary
Coach
Moeller.
Moeller. We
Yep.
opened it up a lot considering the times. But no, I do think, Ballas, that blocking for a mobile quarterback like JJ that can run around can present some challenges for the offensive line. But the ideal state is the same. The ideal state is I'm going to give you 3 seconds back there, buddy. You're going to get 3. 1,001, 1,002, ball gone.
Yeah.
And if not, and you're going to make it up, you're going to do some running kind of thing that's not scripted, it's not part of the play, then do us a favor and take the most concerning route that's makes the most sense so you don't get a sack, big loss of down. They still teach these guys, get rid of football. Don't take a sack. Don't ever take a sack. And of course, again, uh, No one should be touching that quarterback, Ballas, ever.
Nobody should be breathing on him, he used to say. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, yes, knowing that it was only Hawaii, but there were a couple of throws there where you're looking when JJ hits Cornelius Johnson 54 yards in stride. The one the sideline to Donovan Edwards. First of all, the throw. Okay, first of
Hmm.
all, he identifies that there is a linebacker on this kid, and I'm thinking, okay, this has Saquon Barkley written all over it. Michigan Penn
Hmm.
State will go back. You put a linebacker or Chris Graham, God forbid, in 2006, Michigan Ohio State trying to cover one of Ohio State's running backs. But he identifies it. You see him look over there, and I'm thinking, you know where he's going with this ball, assuming the
Hmm.
safety's not in the play. And
Hmm.
the strike that he threw, the catch that was big boy football right there, and that's something
Hmm.
that with all due respect to Cade McNamara, we haven't seen. It's a different level.
Yeah, well, that's that was the one knock on Cade last year. We said when's the deep ball connection going to develop? When's it going to develop? And it's an absolutely fair point, Ballas, that it looks like JJ's got a much faster dialed in point here on this deep ball than Cade did a year ago on last year's team. And so when you can do that, you make safeties start wondering, and they get a little nervous about any color getting behind them, which they're not supposed to do anyway, unless they're on some other assignment. And so with him back there and that ability, it opens up that offense a little bit, makes the defense wonder a little bit more, which should, in theory, loosen things up for your running game. One of the things that I think it was the Roman Wilson touchdown, the first play of the game, or the second play of the game there. Both Hawaii safeties are creeping up. They're within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage because they're looking at that running game coming out of there. And whoop, there he goes, one on one and a seam right down the hash. And that's an easy touchdown. So, again, when you have threats on both sides of your offense with running and passing, it just makes everything else easy.
Yeah, and he sells that fake extremely well. He actually sold the fake on that handoff and pulled it back, and I mean, he was open by 10 yards.
Hmm.
That's the thing. So Roman
Hmm.
Wilson, love that kid. The fact that he did it against Hawaii, his home state. I think his grandmother actually lived in St. Ignace. He might have up north with Barry Pearson country, but
Hmm.
out in Hawaii, it was good to see him do that. I joked that he was getting them back for not recruiting him, but I'm guessing Hawaii probably did try to recruit him a little bit too. So.
It was
Um,
exciting. The kid was
yeah,
having a lot of fun, and
he
it's
was.
I was they're showing shots of the Michigan sideline and a TV copy there, and it brought me back to the times when we played some teams that were not very good, and
Yeah.
we had some blowouts. That's a lot of fun, right? You see those guys with the smiles on their faces. They've all worked their tails off going back to last January, and so they should be having fun, Ballas, and that's exactly what you want to see. And then the kid who's playing a team from back home and he scores the first two touchdowns and he's running crazy and doing all that stuff. That was fun to see.
Were you on that team that beat Houston like 70-7 when Tyrone Wheatley took the kickoff back to open the
Yep,
game?
yeah, it was
Yeah.
63-3 was the final. That was the
Okay.
game. That was the game that I got busted working on my golf swing on the sideline. And
So that's where it all began.
Dick Vermeil, Dick Vermeil and Brent Musburger had the telestrator and were critiquing my hip turn and my
No
shoulders and
kidding,
everything.
really.
Yeah, this happened.
I
This
can't
was
wait
on
to
live.
find this.
This was on live television. True story. Mark Melia, Dr. Mark Melia now.
Yes.
Uh, he and I had we got into golf and we were playing at that time a little handheld video game in golf and were into golf and it was 63-3. And so we're, waiting for the clock to run out. And so I'm just standing there talking to Amelia, and I was like, I got to work on getting my hips open more in my backswing. And I was, I had my helmet down and I just practiced a golf swing. And what are the chances that live television just happened to be looking at me at that moment?
Well, in a 63-3 game, right? What else are they going to be looking at? But that's classic. And Hutch, our producer Hutch, it's up to you to find that video for next time. We're going to put it on there, and we're all going to
Yeah.
critique
It was
Doug
like
Skene's team.
1992, 1991,
I think it
1992,
was 92.
Michigan, Houston at Michigan. Yeah, that
Yes,
was,
yeah.
and I got in a lot of trouble for that too, Ballas. I
Did
heard
you?
about that the next day from Coach Moeller.
And it's funny because years later you had guys like Dennis Norfleet dancing to Atomic Dog, waiting to return punts. I got a text from one of your angry teammates, or actually somebody who played before you, saying, "How in the hell are they letting that?" I'm like, "Hey, they're just having a little fun out there." He's like, "This is
Yeah.
everything that's wrong with this program, and why we're not winning football games. So there's no fun allowed here. But
Yeah, well, when you're not winning, it's amazing
yeah,
how you're not allowed to
a little
do
different.
things, and then when you're winning, okay, we can have some fun. So
Yes.
hey, well, at the time the culture was a little bit different. The program was a little more strict in a lot of ways at the
Blue
time, and
Blazers.
Blue Blazers, yeah, shirt and tie and stone cold faces to and from the stadium, and so you and I have talked about that through the lens of Aidan Hutchinson, through my friend Chris Hutchinson last year, just the
Yeah.
differences and with the way things were
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago than the way they are now. And I get it. I totally get it. These kids are out there having fun, but they're working just as hard as we did. And when they go have success, they should have fun. And I'd like to think that if I got caught in the sideline nowadays working on my backswing, then maybe the head coach would say, "Hey, yeah, you do need to turn your shoulders and hips a little
Right.
bit better in
Yeah.
that backswing to get get the club down in the slot,
Yeah.
so you can really square the face." You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
Balas?
I do, and you've come a long way. I wish I could say that it's helped my game, but you saw what happened the last time we played. So what a disaster. So you still have the blue blazer?
No,
You know what I'm
no.
going to
You know
say,
what?
right?
True story.
What
True
am I going to
story.
say?
What? No. What are you gonna say?
Fat
Oh,
guy
fat.
in a little, fat guy in a little coat. Fat guy in a little coat. No,
That guy, the fat guy in a yellow sweatshirt.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was so. No, I did hang on to that blazer for quite
Okay.
a few years, and then finally, my wife was like, "What? Why are we keeping this? It doesn't. You don't ever wear it. It was just, but it was the Big Johnny blue
Hmm.
blazer, and so probably. I mean, there's probably some Michigan guys that still have that thing hanging in their closet, but I did.
Yeah.
I think I did give it to Goodwill or something.
Yeah, well, some guy in somewhere is looking pretty sharp in Doug Skene's blue blazer. And if he only knew how valuable that thing really was, man,
Right.
he'd be at the gold and silver pawn shop tomorrow. Trading it for for something. A sack of.
There it is.
This show gets better and better. Hutch, man, I owe you so many beers. I love this guy. Hutch is actually a Penn State guy. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not.
It was
So,
Hutch that was in the front row barking at me saying I was a fat guy in a yellow shirt there at that Penn State game a few years ago. It was him.
oh, what?
Hutch, it was you.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I know. I'm coming for you.
I'm talking about a different Hutch, our producer here.
I
So
know. I
yeah,
know. I
okay.
know who
Oh,
you're
I
talking
gotcha.
about.
Okay, I gotcha. So hey, speaking of Hutch, Aidan Hutchinson today, the Lions lost 38-35. I know that'll stun you. He had a good start. He got some pressures, but going up against these tackles and Philly's got one hell of an offensive line. You know what? He got handled at times, but I
Yeah.
guess that's to be expected. You know what?
Yep.
He's
Yep.
going to have to get stronger still. This kid's already strong, but he kind of looks like a linebacker out there, and
Doesn't he?
not a deep. So
Yeah.
what do you do? Do you ask him to put on a bunch of weight, or what do you do?
No, you just
Yeah.
gonna keep him on the path he's on. He's gonna fill out a little bit more. He's gonna learn the tiny little differences of where to have success at the NFL level. Your vanilla bull rush and your vanilla, drop the shoulder around the corner don't work every time against NFL tackles. And Aidan is learning that now. And for anybody that watched the game today, I watched a good chunk of it, and I was watching him and just getting blocked and passing down, and I'm like, yeah. Uh, Here's a news flash. Offensive tackles in the NFL are really freaking good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're
That's why
not
they
going
get paid the big bucks,
that's
right?
why they get paid
Yes.
10, 15 million bucks a year.
Yes.
And so you're not just going to fool them and take advantage of any tiny little deal. But the one thing that hasn't changed in watching Hutch play, man, that kid works his ass
He
off. He
does.
is all over the place. And that's why in time he's going to be very successful.
He was gassed, and you could tell it at times. But he was going sideline to sideline, and there he is in the play.
Yep.
The other fat guys are back there loafing, and he is there to the ball. That is the kind of guy that helps change the culture of a franchise, and
Hmm.
they'll get better. There's no
Hmm.
question in my mind that he will help them get better. It's the
Hmm.
Lions, so with all due respect to the
They need
Hutchinsons
some
and
help,
everybody.
Ballas.
Yeah,
So today, this was the first Lions game that I probably really sat and watched in I would say 10 years.
yeah.
And I'm looking at this team and I'm going, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see why Lions fans feel the pain here because they need some more players.
Hmm.
But the one thing that I would say about that team, where they do need some other playmakers on both sides of the ball, obviously, they play hard.
Yep.
I think they really like this coach
Agreed.
and they play hard, and that will count for something.
Yep. Let's talk real quick about the Michigan defense here. We got a few minutes left, so you can't really glean a whole lot. And I know that Jim Harbaugh talked about building the wall in the running game. You know what? They could have thrown five pylons out there, as Anthony Broom, our staff writer, likes to say, and the linebackers could have cleaned up against these guys. But again, they look like they like playing together. Like they like getting to the ball. They hustle to the ball, much like the Lions that you were just talking about. This group plays really hard together and plays pretty well.
Oh, I agreed. Again, let's put a little, little note here. It's against Colorado State and Hawaii, but this defense looks like they're absolutely having their way, executing what they want to execute. Mozzie Smith is causing all kinds of problems in the interior of opposing offensive lines. The young player Graham in there, I watched him in a few sacks. That kid or not sacks, but tackles. The effort's off the charts. And again, the rotation of this defensive line playing together. There's no one pointing any fingers. Of course, why would you when you're up 50 to 3 or whatever it is? So in the early on here, this defense is off to the kind of start you wanted to have them start off with. I think this may be one of the benefits of Michigan starting off, helping this defense starting off with this caliber of opponents. Of course, we'd like to see it ramp up, but the Michigan defense is going to get into these more challenging opponents with all kinds of confidence, and I think that's a good thing. Because there's some question marks on that team. But I love the rotation, the way this defensive scheme, right? Last year with McDonald and now with the new coordinator, but it's the same exact defense. You're rotating guys in there, all kinds of guys playing. Everybody's got a part in this thing. There's no one standing around going, "Well, I'm just a backup. I'm not going to play." It's part of the benefit of having all these different packages on and off the field. These guys are out there having fun and enjoying it, and that's going to pay dividends here in a few weeks when we get out down to Iowa, I think.
Yeah, and if you look at the stats that Hutch just put up, it's a bunch of guys with 4, 3, 2, 1, 1 tackles. Harbaugh talked about Mike Sanders still. He said the kid was an animal out there. He was all over the place, and you could sense it. And he had one tackle. You know what?
Yeah,
Tackles don't always tell the story of a defense. So
yeah.
you had a bunch of guys in there again around the ball, playing extremely well together, and a lot of guys got to play. And there were some people pissed off that had bet on the 52. I said on Jamie Morris's show last week, I said you don't touch a 52-point spread because you don't know what's going to happen in the second half. And by the way, congratulations on your second place finish in staff picks this week. Second place.
Second, wait a minute.
Second,
Who got
yes,
first?
I
Who got
did
first?
56-10. So, but
Oh,
nice
come
try.
on.
But hey, there was almost two in a row
You
for
know
you.
what? I think you're looking at my picks now, going, all right, I'm gonna play the Price is Right game here and just go a little bit higher,
Well, we changed them.
$1 more.
If it looks
So
like you're going to win, we just go back in and change them. We have that ability. So, but no. But you know what? Here's the thing: you don't touch a spread like that because you knew that Jim Harbaugh was going to let a bunch of guys play, and they should. This is one of those games. These next two games are when all of these guys are going to have an opportunity. The guys that are on the practice squad, and you guys love seeing that, didn't you? Back in the day, your
loved
teammates
it.
that never get to
Yep.
play.
Everybody wants to get in the game because then you get into the film and you get a grade sheet, and then everybody's got something to talk about when you get together as a team and you watch the film together, and it's just a lot of fun. So those are good times. And again, I talked about it earlier. When you see that whole Michigan sideline having fun, smiling, and it's a big blowout game, it's a Saturday night. Boy, those are great times. I'm
Yeah.
happy to see the guys get to do those things.
Yep. Somebody asked about Eric All, the injuries. Eric All was on a bike. I saw him on the sideline riding. I think if he was uh, seriously injured, I don't think he'd have been down there riding that bike. Maybe he hit
Yeah.
some tests today. Donovan Edwards, somebody who was down there on the sideline, said that Donovan Edwards was walking around, looked okay. They were supposed to have some tests done this morning as a precaution, but we can't definitively say that he's okay, but he has a lower leg injury or boo boo or whatever you want to call it, like Brady Hoke used to call it. So we think he's going to be okay. Don't hold us to it, but hopefully it's nothing serious. That kid is going to be pretty special. I still don't really know what his best role is. He doesn't seem like an elite between the tackles runner yet, but he is one of those Marshall Falk type running backs that you have to get the ball in his hands and can be an outstanding receiver too. Skene.
Well, there's no question, and I don't know that he has to be sectioned into just one part of a football game. I think that's the strength of him right now is that you put him out on the edge and you watch for a matchup mismatch and you throw the ball to him 50 yards down the field. He makes an acrobatic catch, lands on his head and hangs onto the football. Or as we saw in week one, you do pile him up there between the tackles and he drags a linebacker 5 yards and then everything in between. I think that the sky's the limit for this young man. And when you combine him with Corum, That's a dynamic backfield, and as an offensive lineman, I would love to have two guys back there that do that kind of stuff. And you just kind of know when one of those guys is in the huddle and he steps in there and certain plays are called. What you got to get a feel for what he's going to do and what he's not going to do, and it's fun to have those options.
We've got a bunch of viewers that are waiting, just dying for us to mention Nebraska. So let's hold on 1 second, take a moment of silence. Bow your head for 1 second. Moment of silence for Scott Frost and for Notre Dame. Okay, we're good. So
Notre Dame and Scott Frost. Yeah, well, those are
yeah.
two. Yeah.
Okay, now what is you know what? Here's the thing. You don't know the history behind my history with Scott Frost's mother. She sent us a scathing letter after staff picks, and we'll get to that maybe on before the Nebraska game. We'll tell everybody what the story is there. But Scott Frost, somebody asked if he was going to go into the Alabama rehab program for coaches. Is Nick Saban going to rescue him and make him the associate special teams coach or something like that? But
and then he'll be the head coach of somewhere else a year from now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was a great game, by the way, Alabama against Sarkisian and Skene. Yeah. You got to love it. However, Nebraska, you know what, looking for a coach. And that's a program, man, that just really has not gotten its mojo back. And it's tough. Two things, right? You're following a legend. Solich wasn't good enough for them with his 9-3 records. Neither was Bo Pelini. You know what? So where do you go now? Matt Campbell or something like that? It's got to be tough to recruit there, right? Nothing against it.
Here's what sound. Do you think Nebraska joining the Big Ten was a good thing for Nebraska at this point?
Academically,
sure.
Yes,
sure. For the football program,
no,
I don't think so.
No.
I don't. It's Nebraska feels like kind of like Arkansas football.
Yeah,
they're kind of out there in a state that's difficult to attract kids to. When they were in their heyday, they had most of their starters. A lot of them were from Texas, and Coach Osborne used to go down there in Texas and grab all kinds of talent and bring it up there. And they used, they had the big game against Oklahoma. And so it's just, I think it's a tough place to get going again. And I thought Scott Frost would do a good job there.
So did I.
But obviously he didn't, which means there must be some pretty big challenges there. And so it's, my old grudge against Scott Frost, although I never played against him, that 97 team and the way that thing went down, I haven't forgotten about that. So,
yeah.
And
I'll
Frost,
I'll tell you who really hasn't is John Jansen. We will get him on this podcast, by the way. He already agreed that he's going to come on here. And we'll
I'd
talk
love to
about
have
that.
Jansen.
I can't wait to hear those stories.
Of course, yeah. Jansen's got a far more bigger axe to grind than me.
As the captain of that 97 national championship team that had to split it with Scott Frost because of the crying. So somebody did put on there, who wants to live in Lincoln for 3 or 4 years. I like Lincoln. I love Lincoln. I like Omaha. I've been there a few times and good people. When you went there for a game, they were so, even when they lost, they said, hey, man, I hope you guys had a good time. And could you even imagine? Of course, now they used to do that at Penn State, too, until they lost like the 8th or 9th time in a row. And then you were like looking to get out of there without getting your car keyed or
Penn State's still a pretty good road trip, I think. For any fans I've talked to that have gone out there, they say it's a pretty good road trip.
You have to say that because Todd Rucci's your buddy. That's the only reason to say that. So, all right, I think we've talked enough here today. So he's Doug Skene. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more offensive line stuff to break down in the next segment, and that's against UConn. They're no good either. So maybe Maryland, you know what? At least Maryland has some athletes, but these guys got to get better. Skene, flat out. I was disappointed. You know what? You can say everything you want to. Well, it's just this, just that. These are mistakes that you can't make against bad opponents.
No, you cannot. And I remember, I remember what year it was. We played Wake Forest in one of these September games in the late 80s, early 90s, and we beat them handily. But boy, after we watched the film, it felt like we lost. We were told how terrible we were and how we're not going to win the Big Ten, and if you don't get going, we're going to get our butts kicked by Michigan State and Ohio State, and I'm guessing to some degree, Coach Harbaugh and his staff are probably echoing some of that sentiment here, starting today, going into this week. You have not arrived in September, and there's no September national championships. Although I think some Michigan fans think that there is such a thing as September national champions. There isn't. Just like there's no September Heisman. So again, the schedule stinks. These opponents stink. So we should roll them, and we should roll them cleanly. And then you and I can just talk about old stuff because there's nothing to criticize about these current performances. And wouldn't that be fun?
including your golf swing on the sidelines, which is fantastic. I'm gonna go back now and look. I've got my VHS tapes. I don't think I have a VCR, but there's got to be some way with a
I
flash
have
drive.
I have the VCR tape. I
Do you
have
really?
the tape in this. Yes, I
If you
have that.
if you pop it in, the thing's gonna fall apart and moths are gonna fly out.
That's
So I
probably
don't
the
know.
problem. Yeah, is
Yeah,
I don't have a VCR player, but I do
right.
have the tape. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, we're going to bring that up, and Hutch is going to work on that. But, folks, thank you so much. Please like our podcast. Let's get to 500 likes. I don't know what that does. If you know what, you get a free, like a participation trophy, or if I get a bonus. But if so, that's even better. So that gives you all the more incentive to like that thing. And Skeen, appreciate your time as always. We'll do it again next week.
All right, go blue.